And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Let's look at your 4th of July aviation weather, and starting out on Tuesday morning, we'll find IFR conditions along areas of the northern and northeastern Gulf, including Yakutat, and often along the outer coast there of the Panhandle into the eastern Gulf. Also IFR conditions off Utqiagvik there in the far north, and then extending down through the Bering Strait, through St. Matthew, St. Paul, covering much of the Aleutian chain and up onto the north side of the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. We've had one area of low pressure move up, at least today, this Monday, up across the southwest with the moisture and areas of rain and scattered rain showers that are going to continue to lift north and northeastward. Another batch of rain will be coming up along the Alaska Peninsula, spreading into the southwest, especially through Kuskokwim, Bristol Bay areas as we go through the day on Tuesday. And could even be a few isolated thunderstorms pop up along the east end of the Brooks Range Tuesday afternoon, and on the east side of Kotzebue Sound and entering the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, MVFR conditions expected across much of the Gulf Coast, with IFR conditions again just offshore of the Arctic coast and down through the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait, out through the central areas of the Bering Sea, including St. Matthew and St. Paul, with areas again of IFR continuing in portions of the Aleutians and especially on the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. By Wednesday, we have more of this moisture wanting to work its way north and eastward, especially through the west side of the state. IFR conditions are expected again along the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Widespread MVFR conditions across areas of the Gulf. Fairly widespread VFR conditions Wednesday morning across much of the interior and into areas of the Panhandle, and that should continue into Wednesday. On a more important note, we're going to see quite a warm temperatures develop here across the southeast, including the Panhandle, latter half of this week into the weekend. In fact, we'll see some temperatures in the 80s. Can't even rule out maybe an isolated 90-degree reading as a result of a building dome of very warm air associated with a ridge of high pressure, especially in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. This is going to keep the storm track and the flow of moisture mainly going across the western and southern portions of the mainland here as we go through the midweek. Now, pass conditions on the 4th at Anatuvik Pass, as well as Adigan Pass in the Brooks Range, look for VFR conditions. Further south and west, there will be some cloud cover, some showers around Lake Clark and Merrill, so MVFR conditions expected there, rounding up through rainy and windy passes. We expect MVFR conditions, especially early in the day, should become VFR around Windy Pass as we go into Tuesday afternoon and evening. Same thing, Isabel Pass, MVFR conditions to start the 4th, but becoming VFR. And generally speaking, we expect VFR conditions to hold at Mentasta on Tuesday. Further south and west across the Copper River Basin, generally VFR conditions are expected at Tanita Pass. Portage Pass will see VFR conditions become MVFR later in the morning and afternoon. And in the far northern part of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White will start the early morning with MVFR conditions giving way to VFR. Well, looking at the freezing levels, starting aloft, we have high freezing levels above 10,000 feet over the northeastern portion of the mainland along the Alcan border into Yukon Northwest Territories. Coldest pool of air aloft is right over southwest Alaska. We've had this general area of low pressure in this region, and we've had cloud cover and areas of rain and rain showers lifting through this area. So this is where the greatest instability would be. Thicker cloud cover and precipitation with freezing levels down there and just above 6,000 feet over the southwest, and another colder pocket of air aloft back toward the western half, the Aleutians, associated with yet another area of low pressure. Greatest threat for icing will exist along areas of the southwest Alaska Peninsula into the southern Kodiak Island on Tuesday, generally above 6,000 feet, and also some isolated moderate icing possible along areas of the Brooks Range and North Slope above, though, 10,000 feet on Tuesday. And jet stream level winds across much of the mainland, at least the southern half. Look for southwesterly winds 60 to 70 knots. Back to the west from eastern Russia in through the western Bering Sea, winds are more northeasterly in excess of 65 to as high as 80, 90 knots. And at 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, we find a southwesterly flow, a broad southwesterly flow, 35 to 50 knots. This is helping to transport the moisture out of the North Pacific and Bering Sea upwards into the western and southern portions of the mainland. On the backside of the low, we have northeasterly winds, 40 to 50 knots there over the western Aleutians. And at 3,000 feet, we find a low-pressure circulation back here toward the eastern Aleutians, and ahead of it, winds are going to be out of the south-southwest, 40 to 55 knots along a frontal system. So as we would expect with those kind of winds just 3,000 feet above the surface, the greatest threat for moderate turbulence will be across the southwest, including Etolan Strait, Kuskokwim, Bristol Bays, much of the Alaska Peninsula, parts of Kodiak Island, western arm of the Alaska Range, surface to 4,000 feet. We also have an area of turbulence off to the north along kind of the spine there of the western Brooks Range, surface to 4,000 feet, and then another area out here central back toward the western Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet.